For those that know me know that I am a huge Metroid fan, and for those that know Metroid know that the newest game in the series, Metroid Dread, just released yesterday. Now you're probably wondering why I'm not playing it. Well,
Fuck!
hey guys, this is the Transformer Gundam, and to celebrate the release of Metroid Dread and to make my wait to play the game a little less agonizing, I'll be reviewing this highly anticipated figure. This is the Samus Aran Metroid Prime 3 Corruption Figma from Max Factory and Good Smile Company. Now, if you saw my initial unboxing for this figure, you know how excited I was to get it in. So let's not waste a lot of time and take a look at this beautiful figure. Now this version of Samus comes from, of course, the fan favorite Metroid Prime series, and more specifically, this is from the Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, which is obviously the third game in the series. Now, I think this suit is the perfect transition from the more traditional 2D Metroid that we're used to seeing to a more 3D design, and I really do love a lot of the aspects of this, including the bulky shoulders, and of course, the arm cannon looks great. And of course, if you don't know, the Metroid Prime series is played in first person, and this was the first attempt at a Metroid style game in first person, and really, Retro Studios had knocked it out of the park. Like, nobody knew what to expect with the first Metroid Prime game, and everyone thought that honestly it wouldn't work out, but the original Metroid Prime has become one of the most well-received Metroid games in the whole series, and it's actually a lot of people's favorite game. While it's not my favorite because I grew up playing Zero Mission, I really did enjoy the first Metroid Prime. And of course, as I said, this comes from the third game, which fortunately I don't have too much experience with playing because I did sell my Wii. But the design, as I said, doesn't really change too much between Prime 1 to Prime 3, at least for the various suits. There are some minor differences, the main one being with the visor here. The visor has changed just slightly from Prime 1 to Prime 3, and I'll put up a picture of the difference between the Prime 1 visor on this side and then the Prime 3 version. And the only difference really being is that they added this little bump area right here on the visor, which honestly I do like how it looks. I think it looks really great, and the paint here that they used is fantastic. Especially, I love this metallic green on the visor, especially once you get it to hit the light. It just really stands out. And now, speaking of the paint here, they of course went with a metallic paint, which looks really good. However, I do think they used more of a matte finish, because while it is glossy, it's not like a super metallically gloss finish, but it still hits the light extremely well, especially with this gold here. I really do like how that looks, especially in contrast with the yellow on the chest and on the inner thighs here. And one thing that I really do like that I already mentioned is, of course, the green here on the visor, but also here on the legs. That looks really great. And what it is here is that it's actually clear plastic with it painted green underneath. That's how you get this really nice lighting effect here. It looks like it's like all lit up going all the way down the legs, especially once you get it into the light. That just looks really good, especially comparing that to how they did the other M version here. They just did normal metallic paint, but having that clear on top of it really just helps elevate it, in my opinion. And I'll do more of a comparison between these two figures later. And speaking of the arm cannon, this looks really good, and one little detail that I really like here is if you look in the actual game, it had this glowing effect, like it had energy buildup in the cannon, and it's replicated beautifully here with this really nice gradient here. It starts with orange, then goes to yellow, and then finishes off with, of course, a white. And I really do love that gradient, like there's just energy buildup inside. And if you look on the inside here of the arm cannon, it is painted yellow, which I think it would have looked a bit better if it was painted green, but that is just in my opinion, to match with the rest of the color of the arm cannon, of course. But besides that, the paint is great. There's no flaws at all. And the finish is fantastic, as I said earlier. So let's quickly get into the articulation now. And there are some very interesting design choices that they decided to go with in terms of the articulation. So I'll get to that in the next segment. So getting into the articulation segment, I did kind of take Samus apart just a little bit just to show off some very interesting design choices that they decided to go with. So let's start off here with the head. And if you are familiar with the Figma joints, this is a very standard Figma joint, which is just, let me get my light so you can see a little better, comprised of a ball joint, which as you can see is attached inside the actual helmet there. And that allows some movement here. And then this is just a typical hinge joint, peg that will plug into the ball joint in here. So this is a double ball joint. So inside here is a ball joint, so you can go move and rotate all around here. And this is a hinge joint, so this allows some up and down movement. And then inside the actual neck is another ball joint, so that allows for some really good range of motion in the head here, so you can get some really excellent up and down as well as side to side and rotation. However, that's a little bit hindered once you actually add the neck seal here. So this is the neck seal that you can just plug in here, and then you just re-plug in the ball joints like so. And with the neck seal attached, it does slightly hinder the articulation, especially going side to side like this, but you still get some excellent range of motion going up and down. And it can rotate, but it can't really rotate a full 360 without it falling apart. Also, this could be due to me not having it all the way pushed in, but it does struggle to rotate a full 360 just due to the design of the chest, and also with these bulky shoulders kind of blocking the way there. So now let's talk about the arm joint, and more specifically the shoulder joint, and the really weird design choice that they decided to go with there. So real fast, before I get into the actual joint itself, I do want to talk about this material here, which is the undersuit detail, which is the same material as the neck seal, which I actually don't know where it went. So this is the neck seal, and it is just a kind of a harder plastic, but it's still slightly bendable here, as you can see if I put a little bit of pressure. And I actually lied, this is actually a different material here than compared to the neck seal. So this is more of a rubberized material. You can see it is very bendable, very squishy. I can squish it around and move it, and it's a cool design choice. However, it does get into a problem when you plug in this arm joint, and this is more specifically the shoulder joint. And how this works is this ball joint is of course going to plug into there, and then you have the actual arm itself here, which has a hole which will of course plug that ball joint into that hole. And then finally you have the shoulder itself, which plugs into the hole in there. So it is comprised of 3 ball joints, and let me just show you what happens when I start to move the arm around on this side. So you can rotate it about that far forward, and then this actual rubberized material kind of stops it from rotating a full 360, and I don't know how well this is going to pick up. Let me see if I can move this camera down, maybe zoom in a little bit, and we'll see what happens when we try to force it past that point. You can see right here that the rubberized material is already starting to bend, and when you force it to rotate a full 360, you can see it putting pressure against that rubberized material, and there's actually a little bit of force going against it. Like if I move it this way, it's actually forcing it to stop right here. Now of course I can force it past that point, but I'm putting a lot of stress on this rubberized material, which is kind of scary because I don't want this to tear or break. And if I force it, you can really see like right there, if you are not careful with this figure, I can really see just that ripping or tearing. So that's one thing I will say that is not a very good design in my opinion. It's just this rubberized material is, for one, it hinders the articulation, and also I can see this very easily tearing or even breaking the joint inside if you are too rough with moving the arm around here. But now let me just see if I can. Yeah, you can see right there it's starting to bend. So let me actually just move this back into place. And yeah, you see that full rotation already messed up the positioning of the rubberized material in here, and now it's all out of place and lopsided. So let me try to fix that real fast off camera. So you can see what I made with the very weird design choice. Decided to go with the shoulder, but let's kick back into the rest of the arm articulation. So of course there is some rotation at the biceps, and as you can see the bicep can actually move separately from the shoulder itself. So the bicep can move about this much, and with the shoulder it can go about that much. So you really don't get much more out of the actual shoulder joint, just because of how bulky the actual shoulder is itself. But with the bicep movement there, you get a little bit more range of motion going out to the side like this. Now going across the body is unfortunately also very limited, just due to, for one, the weird design with the rubberized material in the shoulder, and also just due to the bulky design of the shoulder itself. You only get about that much going across the chest, which is kind of disappointing because it makes trying to two-hand the arm cannon a lot harder to do, because that's really all you get for going across the body. So really she can't grasp the arm cannon with her other hands, and that's kind of disappointing, honestly. But getting into the arm bend, it does bend at a single joint at this very standardized Figma joint here, which to this day I still don't really know how to feel about it, because it is just really odd looking in my opinion. But you get about that much for the arm bend, which again kind of disappointing, but it's still not terrible. And on the other arm you do get about the same motion. It actually looks like you get a little bit more movement out of this arm compared to the arm cannon arm, but not much. And getting into the hands, they can rotate a full 360, go up and down as well as side to side. Now getting into the diaphragm joint here, as you can see, it is very good. So it can rotate a full 360 with no problems at all. And you get this flap here, which you can move up, and that allows for a more of a ab crunch. So you get a very nice ab crunch there, as well as some side to side motion, and as well as arching the back. Pretty decent range of motion there. And getting into the hips, again, there's rubberized material here in the pelvis area and in the actual legs, so be careful with moving the legs around, because the two rubberized areas will rub against each other, and I can see that tearing over time. So again, just with this rubberized material, do be careful when moving the figure around a lot, because I don't want this to wear down, which I can definitely see happening over time. But there is a ball joint in the actual pelvis itself, and then a ball joint that attaches into the legs, so it is a double ball joint. So with that, you get some very excellent range of motion for the legs, kicking forward very nicely there, and then going back is also again really nice. You can actually just get this to rotate a full 360 if you really wanted to. And you do get a separate joint here, as I said, from the legs. So this was from the actual hip, and then if you hold it here, you get the ball joint from the leg itself. And of course you get some rotation here at the leg and in the hip itself. And going out is unfortunately really hindered just due to the design of the legs, but you do get this flap here which moves out of the way, which does allow for a little bit more articulation going out, but still not that great. And then for the knee bend, you get a very nice bend here. So you can see it is a single joint, but you get a very nice range of motion here, and it does reel some more of that rubberized material. And this one is less in the way, so it's kind of nice, and it does kind of help hide that weird Figma joint a bit. So that's good. And as I said, I really do like how that bend looks in the knee there. And then getting into the feet, you get some up and down motion. You get some really good motion going up, and a really good motion going down here. And you don't really get any side to side. You get a little bit of rotation, and then you do get an ankle pivot, which is separate from the actual ankle. It's actually in the foot itself. So if you move it right here towards the heel, you get a nice ankle pivot there, as well as, of course, a toe bend. So besides the weird shoulder joints and just some interesting design choices, overall I do think that this figure has some really good articulation, which is standard for a Figma figure. However, I do think it could be improved in some areas, but again, just due to the weird design of the figure itself, some of it just can't really do much about, especially with here with the hips. The shoulders I do think could have been done a bit better, and the arm bend is a little bit disappointing, but again, just due to how bulky the arms are itself, I don't know how they could have improved this much more than just a little more than 90-degree bend there. But other than that, really good articulation. And yeah, so my only advice would just be to be very careful when you move this figure around. So now let's get into the accessories. So quickly getting into the accessories, it does come with a pretty decent amount, but I will say that it does not come with as much stuff as the other rim version. So starting off, of course, it comes with the standard morph ball that you would come to expect. And this is a very nicely detailed version, of course, based on the Prime versions of the morph ball. And yes, if you didn't know, the morph balls do actually look different from game to game, depending on which one you play. And this is how it looked in the Prime games. As you can see, very nice. You do get the two kind of half shells, and then in the middle, you do get that green energy effect that looks very nice. It's just the same metallic green that they used throughout. And you can see you get some pretty nicely sculpted details in here. And yeah, I mean, not really much else to say here. It's a standard morph ball with a hole, which of course you can plug into the Figma Stand, which I'll talk about later. Next up, we do get some optional hand parts. So starting off, you do get a very nice looking open palm hand here, very nicely detailed as always. And you can see how the Figma joint works. It is just a ball joint in there and then a peg, which if you want to replace the hand here, which is just the standard fist, you can just pull this out like that and then just put in the hand of choice. Just plug that into the little hole in there, like so. Simple as that, and there you go. Now we have Samus with a open palm hand. Now getting into the other hands, she does come with her famous, which I just dropped, thumbs up hand here, so you can see. Very nice detail in there, of course. And then finally, we do get a more, I guess, grasping hand, which is kind of weird because she doesn't come with anything she can really grasp. I do think this is actually used for the very end scene when she waves to the camera as she walks off. So I think that's what this is for. Let me just quickly check in the back of the box, and yeah, there it is. So there you go. You can recreate that scene with this hand, and then you just get the classic Samus thumbs up hand. So if you want to see how that looks, just take that off and then plug in this hand like there. So there you go. Now you can give Samus the old thumbs up. And for our final accessory, besides of course the stand, she does come with a option part for her arm cannon, and this is to make it look like that she's firing a charge shot. So to replace it, all you have to do is simply pull this tip off like so. You have to put a little bit of force there, and then you can just replace it with the new one here. So just shove it in, and there you go. Now you can make it look like she is firing off a charge shot. Now unfortunately she doesn't come with any beam effects like the other M version came with, but I do have one here from the other M version. Unfortunately I did actually snap the peg, but it did still work with that version, so we can actually do a little test to see if it'll work here. And well, I can already tell this is actually not going to work just because of the peg being snapped. It's not going to fit inside of here, and I can't find her other effect part, so I can't really test it out. But I'm just going to say that this is not going to work with this version, unfortunately. Maybe it does, let me know in the comments, but at least with mine, because I did snap the peg, it's not going to fit inside here, and it's also definitely not going to fit inside the charge shot tip So yeah, that's not gonna work, unfortunately. So that's what I have for accessories. Kind of disappointing, honestly, because it doesn't come with as much stuff as the other M version. You would think that this version would also at least come with effect parts, but it doesn't. But you know, all in all, it's still a really good figure. So besides the lack of accessories, this is excellent figure. But before I get too far ahead of myself, let's actually talk about the action stand. So getting into the Figma stand, it is the standard stand that comes with basically every Figma figure here. So you do get this nice base here, just says Figma here. And then on the other side, it just says 2007 to 2008 Nintendo, licensed by Nintendo, made in China, of course. And then we get the actual stand part itself, which has a hinge joint here, a hinge joint here, and then a hinge joint at the bottom. Pretty standard. And then of course you can just plug this into here like that. And then if you want to get Samus in the air, you can just plug the peg here into the hole on her back. And it is going to be a really tight fit. So let me see if I can do this on camera. There you go. I was able to get a little bit in, but that is a really, really tight fit. So hopefully this will actually stay on it. Let's get her into action pose real fast here. And it looks like there is going to be a bit of a weight issue with this stand, which is kind of a big problem. So I don't know if you can see that, but it looks like it can't really support the figure on top here, but from here you can still support the figure kind of if you want to get her into maybe a running pose, but even then it's just going to tip the whole stand over. So wow, that's honestly kind of disappointing. I didn't even test the stand out before doing this, and it can't hold the weight of this figure, and this is honestly a pretty hefty figure. So let me know if anyone else who has this figure has this problem with the stand not being able to hold the figure up, because I didn't realize it was this bad. There you go, you can yeah, there you go, that's just not gonna work out. So that's honestly a bit disappointing, but one thing I do want to show off real fast is gotta get the morph ball out. As I mentioned, there's a hole here that you can plug in to the stand. So the morph ball still works perfectly fine, so you can have the morph ball in the air like that. And also one thing that I didn't mention is that the sides of the morph ball can actually turn. I was watching a YouTube video and I saw that they can spin. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you just spin it like this, and the whole thing can spin. So that's kind of a cool detail that they didn't need to include, and the other M version can't do this. So yeah, there you go. And yeah, wow, it even looks like the stand's even having trouble holding this morph ball up. And I don't know if I just got a bad copy. It seems like this screw in here is definitely a bit loose, so I'll definitely have to tighten that up a bit, and maybe I'll be able to actually hold the figure. But out of the box, yeah, that is pretty disappointing. But anyways, we'll do some size comparisons with, of course, the other M version, and then I'll wrap up my thoughts. Oh, one more thing I did forget to mention is that, of course, every Figma does come with its own Figma bag, which is a very nice inclusion. So you can just store all of the accessories that you're not using inside the bag. So that is very cool. So let's put, I guess, the hands and the extra cannon tip in there, and just close that up. There you go. So yeah. And finally, getting into the comparison I've been wanting to see, here is the Metroid Prime 3 Corruption version of Samus right next to the Metroid Other M version of Samus, which, if you didn't know, I also reviewed that figure, so go check that video out as well. But anyways, these are both excellent figures. I would highly recommend both of them. However, there are some differences between the two figures that I do want to quickly point out, besides, of course, the design differences. There are some things about this version which is better than this version, and there are things about this version which is better than this version. Now, one thing that I will say that is a lot better on the Other M version is the shoulder mobility is a lot better, especially coming across here to the chest. She can easily grab onto her arm cannon, and comparing that to the Prime version, well, you already saw the limited range of motion here and the chest going across, but yeah, I stated earlier that she can't really hold her arm cannon with her other arm, and yeah, that is true. This is about as far as I can get it, so you can see she's barely touching it. Like, maybe her can get her fingertips to touch it, but I can't get her to fully grasp her palm around the arm cannon like I can with this version. As you can see, you can get her full palm to actually touch the arm cannon. So that is one thing I will say, is that the shoulder mobility is a lot better on this version. However, for the neck articulation, it's definitely a lot better on this version, and as well as the waist is definitely a major improvement on this version over this version, especially with the double ball joint inside the pelvis and then on the leg. And also this flap here really does make a huge difference. And the knee bend, I'm pretty sure is about the same for both, as well as the feet. The same basic articulation there. So really it comes down to aesthetics and which version of Samus do you like better, and most people will probably go for the Prime version, but the other end version is still great in my opinion. So yeah, here is a quick comparison between those two figures. So quickly getting into my final thoughts, what can I say that I haven't already said about this figure? This is a very good figure. Now, is it perfect? No, unfortunately, it does have its minor issues. I mean, it mostly has to do with the weird shoulder joints that they decided to go with, and especially with that weird rubberized material that they use for the undersuit. While I think it is a pretty cool idea, I can see it really rubbing over time and possibly tearing, especially if you do move the figure a lot, especially with some of the weird joint placements. So I do would say, if you do get this figure, just be careful when you do pose it, and I wouldn't recommend really posing it too much. But besides that, there's really no other faults that I can see. The paint job is beautiful. The proportions are spot on. The only really thing I would say is to maybe lift the torso up a little bit, just make it look a little bit more anatomically better. But besides that, proportions are spot on. The paint job is beautiful. I saw basically no flaws in the paint job at all. I really do love the finish that they decided to go with on this figure. The accessories is a little bit lacking, but as I said, it is serviceable and it comes with everything that you should expect with a Samus action figure. Now for pricing, I don't really know how much this figure goes for nowadays, but I don't imagine that it's going to be easy to find now, because I know these Figma figures do sell out quite fast, and especially with these Metroid figures, they drastically increase in price. Especially, I know the other figure was hard to find for a long time, and with this version I got lucky because they decided to reissue it, and I hopped on the pre-order for the reissue and I got it that way. But for the other version, it took me a while to hunt it down and find it, and I'm glad I did. So anyways, I'd highly recommend this figure, as well as the other version. Both are excellent Figmas. And yeah, that's about it for me. Don't forget to give this video a like, leave a comment if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that notification bell. We are almost to 200 subscribers, so let's see if we can get there. And don't forget to join the Discord. I'll put a link to that in the description below. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. So this is a few days later after I filmed that initial intro, but I got the game in. It's amazing. Buy it.